I want to share my near-death experience because so many stories I've heard have struck a chord and resembled my own experience. What most people don't understand is that it's life-changing when things like this happen. My near-death experience changed the trajectory of my life. It isn't even near death. I call it a full-on flatline, coming back from the dead experience. I am now a new person, a new man, if you will. This happened over a decade ago when I was still in middle school. I had just moved to a new county in Pennsylvania to live near my grandparents, where there were more churches, cows, and grave markers than there were living humans. It was so boring that the only fun thing to do was sneak alcohol from the older kids who would sometimes drive us around, or we would always try out different ways to get high, homemade or properly bought. I had been falling in with the wrong crowd and had been talked into doing things like shoplifting candy and small silly things from big stores. We would always get away with everything, so much so that we began to think that we were invincible. One rainy Monday, after a night of partying and having such a bad hangover that I could hardly see straight, my grandpa walked into my room and yelled at me, "Son, it's 1:15. You're going to be late for your school bus." I didn't mind skipping school, except I knew he would be hanging out all day since my grandma takes over the house on Monday mornings for her church's small group. That means cleaning and cooking for her until the other women get there, and he always makes himself scarce. He used to always tell jokes that I would understand one day when I got married, why he did what he did for Grandma. I grabbed my book bag and ran out the door without changing my clothes, brushing my teeth, or grabbing breakfast. The smell of Axe body spray stung my nose as I ran to the end of the driveway, and every time I think of the day I died, I can still smell the intensity of the fumes. Kids can be so gross, and I was the top offender at the time. Axe was my go-to to cover up my teenage stink. When I was about halfway up the driveway, I saw the bus at my stop. I tried to run even faster, but it was no use. It had already taken off and left me. I knew I didn't want to be around my grandpa and his Bible lessons and warnings, and I definitely couldn't call my folks for a ride. They'd know immediately that I was wasted, and I didn't want to deal with them at that time, though now looking back, I wish that I had. I did the only logical thing that my teenage brain could come up with. I decided to walk to school. I thought to myself, maybe a friend or a neighbor would take pity and pick me up on the way. One other detail of this story that plays in my mind is the fact that they taught us in PE and health class that you always walk against traffic. That tip played in my ears, and I ignored it and started walking alongside the narrow 2-lane road. My dark clothes and book bag made me blend into the surroundings. It didn't even register with me that there was a car behind me as it skidded and the brakes squealed. Excruciating pain for a split second filled every part of my body. I think that I was screaming, but it might have been someone else, but it was incredibly loud. The last thing I heard was my breath exiting my body, and then a whooshing sound simultaneously as I was propelled into a warm and happy light. It wasn't really happy, but I don't think there are words to describe it. Just whole. I was completely whole. I had no pain. I didn't even really remember the last 5 minutes with clarity, but everything was clear. I was loved. I was special. I was whole. I was in the presence of an almighty God. I heard my grandparents' voices in the back of my mind, telling me Bible stories, telling me that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. He approached me. I cringed. It was too much. The emotions were overwhelming, and I felt like I could explode. I just wanted to bow down and worship this entity. I knew that it was Jesus, and I was not worthy. We both knew it. I wanted to be worthy. He held an intense gaze, and it was almost as if I could read his mind, and he could see into mine. There was a flash, and it was like my entire life was played in seconds. The great parts, Mom, Dad, my grandparents. Their love was like this place, overwhelming and intense. I could feel it. The bad parts, bullying, stealing, illegal substance abuse. I saw the way my life was headed, and the memories were cut short. I knew if I stayed, I wouldn't end up with this man, with Jesus. If I stayed, I would end up in an eternity of the gnashing of teeth, as my grandpa always used to say. Jesus looked at me with pained eyes. He stretched his hands out, and I could see his pain. I saw where he had holes in his hands. I remembered the story. He died so my sins could be forgiven. He suffered so I could live here for an eternity with him. He loved me. He stretched his arms out like he wanted me to hug him. I couldn't. I looked down. He said, "My son, my son, my son, it's not your time. When I see you again, choose to join me in heaven." I looked up to see a face full of love. He stretched his arms toward me once again to hug me. I started to run into him, and right as we embraced, I subtly heard the flatline sound, a buzzing, and then felt bolts of electricity jump through my body. Where did Jesus go? What was this intense pain? I just wanted to stay with Jesus. I was so confused when I tried to open my eyes and couldn't. I heard my heart beating again. No, wait. That was the machine. I must be in an ambulance or hospital. How long was I out? I couldn't process what was happening. My body hurt tremendously. I called out for Jesus. Someone called my name and said that I was okay. They had me. But he had me just moments ago. I knew what this meant. I'd survived. I was going to continue living. It was time for a new beginning. It was time to turn away from the things of this earth and focus on being a person worthy of being in the presence of the Almighty One. If there's anything you take from my story, please let it be known that it's not too late. Breathe deep. Do you feel that? Do you hear that? Your life. You're alive on Earth right now to make it better. I had a pretty meaningless existence before my flatline ambulance ride. Since that day, I have never been the same. I'm set to graduate from Princeton Law School next year, with hopes to become someone who helps people get second chances. Tell them you can always restart. It may sound naive, but I know where I would be if I hadn't died and didn't get my second chance. I tried telling this story to my grandparents about a year after it happened. They, of course, told me that I shouldn't lie, and that lying was a surefire way to get me a one-way trip to hell. The stigma of people looking down on those of us who have had these experiences isn't right. We don't ask to have them. They just happen. Are we thankful for them when they happen? Yes. To be accused of lying, though, is one of the main reasons why I suffered alone for so many years, not knowing where to turn and where to share my experience. There's not a lot of information available in small towns. It still blows my mind that so many people from around the world share similar experiences. I would feel so alone in my own experience if I hadn't stumbled upon channels like this. It is never too late to start over. No matter what you have done, there is forgiveness. We can change and get second chances. That does it for today's experience. Until next time, stay safe and continue to be blessed.